If you own a home in California, you already know the insurance market is on fire. And I do not mean that in a good way. Insurers are pulling out, rates are going through the roof, and just finding coverage can feel like an impossible task. But now, the state is rolling out a totally radical new playbook, one that pretty much throws out all the old rules and brings in some incredibly powerful technology to price wildfire risk like we've never seen before.
And look, this isn't just some headline, right? This is the reality for millions of people. For years, the system for figuring out risk has been, well, broken. It just couldn't keep up with our changing climate. And that's created a crisis that has left so many homeowners scrambling, basically forcing the state to try something completely different.
Okay, let's really get into this fundamental shift because it is huge. The old way, it was like driving while only looking in the rearview mirror, basing your insurance rates on fires that happened decades ago. The new way is all about looking ahead. It uses these powerful computer simulations to model future risk. And this is the key part. For the first time, it directly rewards you, the homeowner, and your community for the safety improvements you actually make. It's about pricing risk based on the climate we have now, not the one we had in the past.
So to really understand how this all works, we're going to break it down. First, we'll touch on the insurance crisis itself. Then we'll dive into the wild technology that can simulate wildfires. We'll look at the anatomy of a digital fire, see how your own home's risk profile gets calculated, and then finally, we'll see how all of this gets used to figure out the actual cost.
So let's kick things off with the official policy change from the California Department of Insurance. This is really the heart of the entire strategy. This quote here from Dr. Kara Voss, who advises the Department of Insurance on these models, it really says it all. The whole goal is to create a sustainable insurance strategy by pairing this new modeling tech with commitments from insurance companies to actually write more policies, even in high-risk areas. Believe me, it is a huge pivot. Okay, so if rates are now going to be based on future risk, how in the world do you calculate that? Well, that brings us to the technology at the center of all this, catastrophe models. I mean, really think about that. How can an insurer possibly price the risk of a disaster that might only happen once every 100 years, or even once 1,000 years? Just looking at old data isn't enough. It's incomplete. You have to simulate what could happen. The answer, it turns out, is just brute force computing. These models don't just simulate next year's fire season once. No, they create what's called a stochastic event catalog by running 100,000 different versions of what next year could look like. That massive number of simulations lets them see the full spectrum of possibilities, from a super quiet year to an absolutely catastrophic one. A catastrophe model is, honestly, it's like a flight simulator for wildfires. It pulls together things like meteorology, engineering, and data science to run countless scenarios. It fills in the gaps where historical data just doesn't exist and lets insurers test the financial impact of disasters that haven't even happened yet. And here's basically how the process works. The model starts by generating that giant catalog of possible fires. Then, for each one, it calculates the physical hazard, the heat, the embers. Then, it lays that hazard map over real-world buildings to see how vulnerable they are. And the final, all-important step is turning that physical damage into a financial loss, in dollars and cents. All right, let's look a little closer at what makes these digital fires so realistic. It's an incredible mix of really complex variables. First thing, you have to know where fires even start. And the data here is just staggering. 84% of wildfire ignitions are human-caused. That's everything from campfires to equipment use to down power lines. So the models have to account for this, simulating ignitions along roads, near campsites, and where our communities push up against wildlands. Now, once a fire starts, three things basically tell it what to do. The fuel, and these models are incredibly detailed, using over 40 different fuel types. Then there's the weather, especially those extreme winds like the Santa Anas and Diablos. And finally, the landscape itself. Topography is huge. As we all know, fire absolutely races uphill. And then there's the hidden danger, the real killer, embers. This isn't just about that big wall of flames you see on the news. The modelers have to account for this unbelievable fact. Embers can travel up to 2 miles ahead of the fire front. These tiny, flying firebrands are one of the main reasons homes get destroyed. And this is where a wildfire becomes something else entirely. When those embers land in a neighborhood, the fire can turn into what's called an urban conflagration. The fuel source is no longer trees and grass, it's houses.
During the Tubbs fire back in 2017, embers carried by 70-mile-per-hour winds literally jumped a 6-lane freeway, and an entire neighborhood burned down in about 90 minutes.
Okay, I know this all sounds pretty daunting, but this new system is actually designed to empower you. So let's talk about how your individual actions can now change your home's risk profile in the eyes of these very models.
So this is probably the most crucial point for any homeowner listening. The steps you take to protect your home are no longer just, good ideas. They are now quantifiable data points that can be fed directly into these models to lower your calculated risk and hopefully your insurance rate. And here are just some of those actions, taken right from the state's Safer from Wildfire framework. A Class A fire-rated roof, that helps resist ignition from all those flying embers we just talked about. Ember-resistant vents are critical for stopping them from getting inside your attic or walls. And creating a 5-foot non-combustible zone right up against your house can stop a ground fire from ever even getting a foothold. Each one of these things interrupts a specific way a home can ignite. But it's not just about your house in isolation. The models also recognize that a safer neighborhood makes every single house inside it less risky. And that's why they give credit for homes in communities that are certified under programs like FireWise USA, where neighbors are all working together on shared safety plans. It means collective action gets rewarded.
So, after all of this complex simulation, all this data analysis, what's the end goal? Why are we going through all this trouble?
Well, the main output is a graph called an exceedance probability curve, or EP curve for short. Now, in simple terms, this curve just shows an insurance company the odds of losing different amounts of money. It helps them prepare for those really rare but devastating events way out on the tail of the curve, making sure they have enough money on hand to pay claims for a catastrophe that might be possible but just hasn't happened before.
And that really is the ultimate goal here. By having a credible, forward-looking view of risk, insurers can price their policies more accurately. The whole idea is that this confidence will encourage them to write more policies, creating a market that's stable, available, and fair, one where homeowners can get the coverage they need and their efforts to be safer are finally recognized and rewarded.
This new ability to precisely price risk, right down to the individual house, is a massive technological leap forward. It's aimed at solving an immediate insurance crisis, for sure, but it also opens up a much bigger question for the future. As we get a clearer and clearer picture of the true cost of living in certain areas, how is that knowledge going to reshape our communities for decades to come?